to all of you and thank you for joining. Uh, we had seen last time how Yudhishthir has started gambling, and eventually not only did he stake his kingdom and lost it, but one by one he staked his brothers, lost them all. Then he staked himself, lost himself too. Then he staked his wife Draupadi also and lost her too. And having lost her, uh, Duryodhan and Dushasan, who now became the slave owners, Duryodhan asks first a slave to go and fetch Draupadi. Later on, when she sent him back with a query, Duryodhan asked Dushasan to go and fetch her. Even though Draupadi told Dushasan that she is not in any condition to go to the Sabha with a single cheer. But he said, nothing doing, you're now a slave. And whatever your condition may be, you have to come to the slave as demanded by your masters. So when she tried to escape from there, he rushed, caught hold of her tresses, a lovely hair, which was all bound in a plate, and dragged the shrieking Draupadi to the court where the game was dice was being held, or was held rather. Here Draupadi, as we have seen, she pleaded to the to all the elders to save her from her plight because she felt that she should not be there. She was a free woman. But they kept on debating. And then she even appealed to them that what kind of justice is this where a woman is being molested? And all the greats and all the powerful people were just keeping quiet on some technical issue. She kept on pleading to them, but to no avail. Duryodhan and Dushasan, they kept on having good time and good laugh, and with all kind of lewd comments and jokes, they taunted her. Her husbands were very upset also, but nevertheless, they were prevented by Yudhishthir to take any action. Then eventually, Karn said that all the marks of the honor which the Pandavas had been wearing, they must be removed because they are slaves now. With that, the five Pandav brothers removed their angarvas which they were wearing on the left shoulder and the headgear which they had on. Draupadi, who was only a single cheer, had nothing to remove because normally she would be having a second piece of clothing slung over her shoulder, which was not there. So she wrapped her cheer around her a little more tightly. Vikarna, as we have seen, was very upset at this, and he said that you should not be trying to remove a woman's modesty. That's highly irregular. But they all laughed, and Karn even said, "What modesty? A woman who beds with five men is an unchaste woman in any case. And even if she had been brought here without clothes or her clothes are removed, then too it should not be cause for surprise because in any case she's a woman of she's an unchaste woman." That of course inflamed Arjun, who swore that he would kill the Karn for that remark. Anyway, when nothing was coming from into her support, when all the powers that were there in the court, represented by all the senior people like Bhishma, Dronacharya, Dhritrashtra, and even Vidur and Kripacharya, all these senior people, the greats were there and very powerful. When they did nothing to prevent Dushasan and Duryodhan, and then she appealed to her husband. Even they did not do anything. Then she found that she could not, there was nothing left to her. Then she just relaxed, joined her palms together, and prayed to Krishna and said, "Krishna, let thy will prevail." It was then as the Dushasan, on the permission of, or on the signal of Duryodhan, he started tugging at her cheer, at the sari which he was wearing, the single piece of clothing in which he was donned. But as he started, in order to strip her, but as he started pulling that cheer, mysteriously, magically, the cheer kept on, the nine lengths of cheer which she had on kept on mysteriously extending and extending and extending until eventually it all the her cheer, which was only 9 lengths long, kept on multiplying or kept on increasing in length till a huge pile had was gathered at her feet, and Dushasan became tired of pulling, exhausted, and he stopped that. So while the effort was there, certainly to strip her, her modesty was preserved because they could not remove her cheer. Now here, this is two things are there. One is that the see they wanted to strip her. So what is this metaphor that cheer जो है वो क्या चीज है, and what is the meaning of they wanted to remove her cheer? Here, the cheer represents faith. Faith is the first clothing which which we wear always. And this faith comes to us from the time, almost the time we are born. And we may not realize it, but this is what distinguishes us from the animals. Without faith, we'd all be dehumanized. Now, and this is what all the demonic traits within us, they want to do. They want to dehumanize us and make us like animals. Now, isme, however, when human beings, it cannot really be removed, because once you remove the cheer, and upon this cheer or upon this base of faith, you wear all other divine traits, such like non-violence, peace, righteousness. ये सब उसके साथ आती हैं. They are secondary clothing, very important. But the first of them is faith. Upon faith rests all other things. Incidentally, this morning, I'll just go back a little. This morning, Divya had asked me a question which rightly perhaps plagued her, and she said, we are at the center of the Mahabharata. It'll be better if you could kindly explain to me. 2 weeks ago, fortnight ago, Bharti had asked a question, whether should we ask God help or we should not ask God help. And because she thought, and lots of people think, that God is all-knowing, and so why doesn't he help? And in this case also, what Divya mentioned was, should we just, when somebody is attacking us, should we just hold our hand and say, okay, whatever is being done, let it be done. It must be God will let us resign ourselves to that fate. No, that is not the proper answer or proper attitude. See, if you are really in dire traits, then you must ask God's help. After all, whatever you get, a child, in case of a child, the child gets it from her parents. Now you might say a boss, an employee gets from her employer, and a wife may say, I get everything from my husband. Now that may be partly true in the sense that they are the last conduits, but nevertheless, eventually everything you get is from God itself. So when everything you get from God, and God is your creator, much more than even and is much more than your parent, it's only right and proper that you ask everything from God. Directly you ask him. Use the language which he is familiar with, which he is happy with, and that is the language of the heart. So कहते हैं ना, दिल से मांगो, दिल से कहो. Why? Because God resides in your heart. A Purush resides in your heart. Your ego resides in your mind. So if you are asking only from your mind, you are in fact asking your ego. So don't ask for the ego. You might recall here that I had mentioned there are 3 things in the very beginning, or rather 2. One is Purush and the other is Prakriti. The Purush and Prakriti, when Purush or consciousness starts interacting with Prakriti or nature, then nature generates a form over a tiny fragment of Purush. And that form may be animal form, human form, birds and insects. It may be fishes, it may be anything, it may be trees, it may be plants, it may be flowers, it may be rivers, water, air, it can be anything, sun, moon, earth. Yes, some forms हैं, and they all have got a tiny fragment of the Purush in them, and that's why we worship them all. Now, when we want to ask, so if we ask God, because He is the eventual giver, it will be perfectly in order. But we feel that sometimes we should ask. Only thing is, we have to remember that when God gives us everything that we need. God gives us everything that we need. And if we are still so-called suffering, now that suffering में दो चीजें हैं. एक तो pain है. Pain is to the body, but suffering is in the mind. What is suffering? Suffering takes place when we end up with something which is not to our liking. That necessarily we may not like it, but it does not matter. It does not mean that it is not good for you. That may be good for you in the long run. We may not be aware of it. But whatever God gives you, if you are having pain or if you are having suffering, then God gives you the power to withstand the suffering, or He will ease the suffering. But still, if you are unable to bear it, then do ask. Now, why doesn't God have? Why God has to be asked? That's the question that often is raised. Now, you must remember, whatever we go through is because of our karma. Now, because of our karma, if we have, let's say, hurt somebody, that somebody will eventually hurt us also. So, I know it's not easy in theory, when you keep on discussing like this, but the person who's undergoing that pain or that suffering, he will really be upset when you tell him that it's your past karma. Now, it may not necessarily also be past karma. What if it is the first time, nothing happens, you catch hold of some rowdies there, and catches hold of some innocent woman or a girl and takes her and does all kind of atrocity upon her. Is it her fault? Then if it is not a past karma, that fellow may be generating a karma, and it is possible that in the next birth, the tide may be reversed. But next birth is next birth. This birth, she should feel that she has not done anything. Why should be submitted to this thing? Now, for this, iske liye, in such a case, of course, if you ask God's help, God will come back and attend to you. Because we are why do we have to ask? For the simple reason that we are in a plane, in the frame of duality. Now, हम लोग में तीन चीजें हैं. When we are Purush, Prakriti and ego. So when we are in the land of ego, जहाँ duality है, उस ego में हमको मांगना है. God may be knowing, God may not be knowing, but He is compassionate. When He feels that, okay, you are not able to bear it, then He'll come out and certainly help you. You can look at it in another way also. See, एक तो ये है कि that He is compassionate. But when you have removed your ego, जब तुम्हारा ego है नहीं, खत्म कर दिया है तुम्हारा, all your ego has been evaporated. Now, I talked about two masks. The one is the mask which the Prakriti or Maya gives us at the time we are born. And second mask we don ourselves because of the impression that we get. That second mask is the mask of ego. For removal of the ego, we have to put in effort. When we keep on when we do all these spiritual exercises, essentially to remove that ego. Once your ego is removed, then all that is left is Purush and Prakriti. Purush and Prakriti means nature. Eventually, even nature is part of Prakriti, is a part of Purush. So all that is left is Purush. That time you don't have to ask. That time everything is known to God. And everything that happens will be happening with the will of God. Now, what is the will of God? Will of God is Dharma. Nothing in this universe happens against Dharma. What is Dharma? Dharma is balance. And this balance is upset primarily by violence. Now, so if violence is being committed anywhere, that's against Dharma. If you are completely in tune with God, then not only then no violence can be committed against you. Look at it this way also. When you are in tune with God, then you are the uh, see, then the doer is also the God. Then the one upon whom something is happening, कर रहा है वो भी God है, जिस पे हो रहा है वो भी God है, and the act of doing also is God. जब तीनों ही सब कुछ हैं, तो no violence will be taken place. What is the appropriate thing? What is dharma है? धर्मा के हिसाब से, नॉन वायलेंस के हिसाब से जो भी होना है वो होगा. So that is how, in this case, when Draupadi resigns herself to her, it's not that she resigns herself. That's I'm sorry, it's a wrong word which I do. Draupadi, when she realizes that nothing is going to come out of these people whom she had been pleading before, then she just lets go. At that moment, she leaves her ego behind and she joins her palm and tells God, let your thy will prevail. This is the act of surrender, where you don't have any will of your own and you accept whatever will or whatever the Lord gives you. That's the time when you leave it entirely to Lord, when you have surrendered yourself to Lord. That time your ego, when your ego is not there, then nothing adharma will happen. That is how the 9 yards of cheer kept on increasing, and 9 lengths of cheer kept on increasing. Incidentally, what is this 9 length of cheer? I don't know whether I mentioned earlier. This 9 length of cheer, they represent the 9 types of devotion which are there. All 9 of them are the 9 forms of devotion which are there. Draupadi had them all. And because she had them all, she was a complete devotee, a perfect devotee. And that is why no harm could befall her. No harm could be, sorry, excuse me. Yeah, sorry. So that 9 lengths of cheer uski thi, that kept on multiplying and multiplying. As long as as long as Dushasana kept on pulling and tugging at her cheer, at her sari, oh, nothing, they could just not remove it. That is because non-violence nahi ho sakti nature mein. Now, so many times I'm asked, what about the animals which are killing each other? Yes, animals are killing, but they are not being violent. It is a process of dissolution. Everything that is born eventually has to die, eventually has to be, dissipate or dissolve. That's the process of dissipation or disintegration. So the animal which is a lion or a tiger which kills another animal is not doing any adharma. That balance is still maintained because he will eat only when he is hungry. When he is not hungry, he will not attack any other animal. And even if he tries, game में कभी कभार उसके पीछे पड़े भी, maybe he's partly hungry. The animal who is being chased, the prey, will almost always be able to evade his grasp. So nature is designed in such a manner that only when the animal is really hungry will it be able to capture a prey, so that no adharma is committed. That is the balance which they maintain. And in the nature, you will see that everything is balanced. It is man only with his ego that he upsets the balance. Now, in this case, attempt to when that miracle which was there, 9 years of study, that kept on multiplying and multiplying, and they could not, uh, uh, yeah, they could not remove her. Now, उसमें ये, how strong should you be your faith? उसमें Swami said very beautifully that the faith of the individual must be so strong that it withstands the ridicule of the ignorant, all usually trivial objections of the worldly wise, and the laughter of the petty-minded. ये 3 तरह के inhibitions की वजह से we don't venture out, we don't open our mouth. किसी चीज में participate करना चाहते नहीं है. It's only because of ego, because of the mask that we are wearing. But this mask has to be overcome. This mask must be removed, the mask of ego. And it should be, when we have to come out and expose ourselves. Now, two things are there again here. One is that, first of all, we accept that we don't know, ignorant hai ya jo bhi hai, and we be ashamed of it. Okay, we don't know today, tomorrow we'll come to know. The second is to let others come to know or expose ourselves before others. One is that when we accept that we don't know, then great possibilities line up. If you don't accept that we don't know, and you really don't know, then you're ignorant. And if you don't accept it, then nothing can be done. If you accept it, then great possibilities arise. Then second thing is that if you expose yourself, that means you picked up courage to let other people come to know that you're ignorant or there are certain weaknesses in you. Then very quickly you'll be able to overcome that weakness, and your ignorance, or if it is your ignorance, that can be looked after. That is the two things that are there. Now, coming to the story again, that after the cheetah had this had happened, then suddenly, as if, sorry, sorry. Yeah. Suddenly, in the whole court, as if some kind of light had dawned, and a veil had been lifted. And Dhritrashtra and others, they felt so. The whole assembly woke up to the atrocity that had been committed. And then Dhritarashtra, in order to atone for his silence, he called over Vidur and asked him, how can we get over this atrocity which has been committed? So Vidur said, you can't get over it, you will have to pay for it. But anyway, the best thing now is to call the Draupadi and grant her 2 boons. So they called Draupadi, the Dhritrashtra called Draupadi and said, okay, ask for any boon that you like. So she said, let my husband be freed from slavery. So he said, granted. Then again, he said, okay, ask for another boon. He said, let all his brothers be freed from slavery along with their weapons. So it is granted. That also is there. Then again, she said, then again, Dhritarashtra told her, okay, ask for yet another boon. She said, no, there's no need to ask for another boon. When my husband and all my husbands are freed, no longer slaves, they have their weapons, they'll be able to take care of themselves, don't worry. So, but Dhritarashtra was still feeling guilty. He called Yudhishter and said, all that you have so-called lost is all restored to you. Go back to Indraprasth without malice and live happily there. So this way, they all started proceeding towards the capital Indraprasth from Hastinapur. Here, Vidur is like he is the real self. Vidur is the real self who understands what is the atrocity that has been committed and what should be done. That's why he knows that atrocity has been committed, and they have to atone for it. Eventually, they will. And right now, the best thing is to let them all go. It's kind of wake up, So the self tries to wake up, but we are in such great slumber that we continue sleeping. So now, when Dhritarashtra told Yudhishthir that everything is restored to you, Duryodhan and Shakuni, his uncle, when they heard about it, they felt cheated. They said, with great skill, we had managed to defeat all of them. They made their slaves, and now Dhritarashtra, the king, has once again granted them their freedom. So Shakuni tells Duryodhan that, look, now we have to go and convince your father again, Dhritarashtra again, the king, that they should be invited for a second round of dice, because now they've got their weapons, they're free, they'll very quickly come back and attack us, and we'll be all defeated. So, and in turn, we'll all be made slaves. So it is better that we get them for a second round of dice. Sorry. Yeah. So Dhritarashtra, his worst fears being stroked, he called Vidur. Vidur again told him, "No, this is all rubbish. You can't do it. You have seen the atrocity that has happened. Cannot repeat it second time." But Dhritarashtra was so enamored of his son that he just couldn't resist. So he sent a slave to the Yudhishter, who had gone only halfway, and told him to fight them back and tell them that they have to come and play a second round of dice. So that slave went over on the horseback very quickly, reached the and the party as they were moving away towards Hastinapur, towards Indraprasth, and told him that the king would like you back for another round of dice. Yudhishthir reasoned that if God wills, this is what God wants. Now here then there's nothing in my power to stop it. Now again, this was a little ego, wanting indulgence, like indulgence he has started. That indulgence doesn't come from righteousness. Indulgence comes from his ego. And this time again, when he reasoned that if God wants me to play a second round of dice, how can I stop it? So he goes back again this time. But Duryodhan, and having settled his score with Draupadi on the advice of Shakuni, then this decided that there was no need for to bet all this thing, that thing, everything. We'll just bet on one thing, and that is whoever is the loser, he will hand over all his king. He will just go to the forest for 12 years and hand over the kingdom to the winner. And when he comes back, then he can take his kingdom back. But he said, after 12 years, there'll be 1 year of what they call agyatwas. You have to live incognito without anybody being able to discover you. If in that 13th year, somebody you are spotted and you are identified, then the loser will have to undergo another 13 years of exile. So with that, they sat down again. And once again, Shakuni, who was throwing the device, he managed to throw the device in such a manner that Yudhishthir lost once again. And now they had to go to the forest, having surrendered the kingdom and everything once again. The forest, Agyatwas. Now, what is okay? Agyatwas will come a little later on, so we can discuss there also. Now, when they were going in the forest, Draupadi, she was very upset, and with her husband, he said, my husband, you are the cause of my of the situation that you're in, and I will open my hair, and I will not tie it back again till such time as both my husband, that means Bhim and Arjun, they fulfill their vows. What was their vow? That if you recall, when Dushasan, okay, sorry, I didn't mention that. Dushasan, when she was pulling out his cheer, but he couldn't. That time, Bhim got very angry, and he said, Dushasan, for this atrocity of yours, one day I'll wrench your arm from your body, and with my bare hand, I'll tear your body apart, and as your chest apart, and as the blood flows out of your heart, I'll drink it. That was his, statement which he had made when Dushasan was trying to strip her, but he couldn't strip her. So his anger. Now, this is what he said. Draupadi says that my husband have to fulfill their vows which they've taken at earlier, and till such time as my husband fulfill their vows, I'll leave my hair unbound. I will not tie them into plate. I'll just leave them unbound. If you recall, unbound hair means that you're not taking care of your principles. That is very dangerous for the society. But it also means, whether it is a man or woman, that a person has been wronged, and that this is way of informing the public that some injustice has been done, and the king has to take cognizance of it and rectify it. Anyway, here no cognizance was taken. Okay.